When you realize this, you may wonder, why do you feel scared at all? Well, an answer, but not the only answer, is empathy. Either you are invested in a character, or you are imagining what it would be like if you were in that same situation. If you were being hunted by some unstoppable supernatural force, surrounded by zombies, stalked by nightmares. Terrifying. If you were to
why did he just why did he use Twilight footage right there?
I think, is that supposed to like sort of be a joke?
I've got to imagine it's a joke.
Like he's pretending that Twilight is almost like a horror. If you consider
I can't get worked up over that. Just why?
It didn't land. That was like a subconscious thing that I didn't catch the first time. I was like, was that fucking Twilight right there?
I just caught it straight away. I was just like, what? But okay, go on, go.
Surrounded by zombies, stalked by nightmares. Terrifying. If you were to jump into the situation in place of the character, you can imagine how vulnerable you would be. So again, doesn't it feel so intuitive that in a video game, everything should be heightened since you are that character? You are in control. You are in the dangerous situation instead of the characters on their own. Mm-hmm. Well, turns out, no, not at all. At least not for me.
Is that right?
see, this is a problem with script writing. You could be like, that's just his opinion. Yeah. He's like, well, he just said it as if it's just not the case for anyone.
It's an overarching problem, and not just his personal. You know, I was thinking about this. I think last night, where I think Mauler and I had a conversation like about Marvel movies, and I think it was something to do with, you know, the heroes just dispatching of the goons like it's nothing, but never taking out the actual bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I realized that it was a petty non-complaint that didn't matter and that I couldn't apply to anybody else. This is what this video comes across as to me.
Hang on. I do want to listen to this again in case he actually did sort of add in a subjective part to it, because I could have sworn he just said, like, it's just not the case.
Well, that's not the case. Yeah.
But does he say... Everyone in chat saying he says for me, so I'll let it play.
Since you are that character, you are in control, you are in the dangerous situation instead of the characters on their own. Well, turns out, no, not at all, at least not for me.
Okay, he saved it. You know, hang on though, he said not at all, at least not for me. It's like, all right.
Actually, you got so fucking sideswept by that first comment. You're just like,
this is true. What? It's like the police show up and you go, I didn't do anything. And they go, and they slowly back away. Like,
video game protagonists aren't human. You cannot fully commit to imagining what it would be like if you were to take their place because you are already in the place along with them. What? In addition to the superpowers, every video game.
This is where it gets really confusing.
This is where it gets pretty ridiculous.
Human.
They're not human, I think because they're...
His first...
I mean...
I don't know how to break this up, because he says, like...
It's all fiction. It's none of it's real.
I think this is his first mishap, is because it seems like he's applying a different criteria to video game characters than a film character or a book character.
Yeah.
When he says that they're not human, I'm pretty sure he will refer this to the fact that he believes that respawning is a superpower.
Yeah.
That is afforded to every.
And so you cannot relate to any of these characters.
Is he marginalizing them as NPCs? Is that what?
Does he at any time talk about identifying with your characters?
This is 13 minutes, so
that's the investment, isn't it? Like the whole emotional investment, like, you know. Because, like, he's using Isaac at the moment. It's like, you know, whether or not do you like empathize with him?
Well,
like, you know,
he's saying it doesn't matter. None of that matters because of the fact that you cannot be a superhuman, being that you respawn. But the irony is, like, there are games where you play as super characters and you identify with them.
System Shock 2 like contextualizes how you can respawn and still be the same person again and again and again.
I mean, just
well, that's the thing.
So it's Bioshock, actually. I know they're not horror.
I was going to say, like, these are characters with powers, telekinesis and stuff. But you get, I was super invested in Bioshock because, like, it didn't matter that, you know, funnily enough, that's actually working as a counter as well because that has a narrative to account for respawning. He does mention that, but he doesn't necessarily. He like mentions that's a thing, but he doesn't say if it works for him or not. He sort of just moves on.
I think he needed to spend more time on that because there is a distinction to be drawn between a game that contextualizes respawns and one that doesn't. Because the one that doesn't, you just got to treat that as non-canonical. Like, this is what might have happened, but it's not canon. You got to do it again. And once you think of it like that, there's no difference between a video game and a film. because it's still a set sequence of events until the end. So if he could get terrified, like, it just seems to be this weird boundary that he's put there.
It is a weird boundary, because you start to ask yourself, like, he says, like, this is a superpower, therefore you cannot relate, and it's like, there are plenty of superpowers these characters have.
That is a superpower, man.
This guy is
a superpower.
This guy is in a different part of the universe, fighting literal demons.
In chat, Kyle Castorena said, even if you can't respawn IRL, you also can't get chased by a xenomorph either, so what's his point?
It's not just that, but I was gonna say, he rags on about Soma, but it's like, Soma, when you get killed, like, you get like a free guy kind of thing, where like you get knocked down versus like die and like respawn in the menu. Like, it actually gives you, it tries to make it like, oh, you've got another chance.
And that ties into his second issue, which is that there's no repercussions for death.
Which is not true. You have to do it again.
How would you have repercussions for death and not break your immersion because you would have had to have died, which is impossible according to him? We should wait.
You do have repercussions. You got to do it again. Like, that's the repercussion.
This is why he needs to be like talking about this with someone before making this video, because there's so many conversations to have. There's so many different ways you can take this, because I have no idea what he was trying to say.
I feel like when he scripts it, he's just like, this is inherently valid. Moving on. Doesn't really have any.
I wrote it. It must be true.
We will, but the thing is, this is before he's gotten into the meat, so we'll give him a chance. I want to see.
Okay.
Because he does say here, I'll relate to them because they're superpower, and I think the first thing he says is because they respawn. I don't think he says anything else.
Game protagonists aren't human. You cannot fully commit.
The aren't human thing is bizarre.
It is. It's really strange.
It's kind of just misphrased, I think.
Of course,
no, I think he's trying to make a point there. I'm just not following what it means.
Have you guys ever played a game that you connected to the person? They're not human anyway. They're like an alien.
Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah,
Crash Bandicoot.
Like
Klonoa.
Portal in the co-op.
Klonoa, exactly. Yeah.
Robots.
These. You don't need to be human to it. This is the damn it.
Let him talk, God.
To imagining what it would be like if you were to take their place, because you are already in the place along with them, in addition to the superpowers every video game protagonist has. Typically, a main character in a video game can't die.
I just say,
well,
just listen to that part again, but listen to the music. It's so like, why did you choose this track?
Are already in the place along with them, in addition to the superpowers every video game protagonist has.
I mean, I don't even know what song it is, but it's just like, why?
In his defense, it is kind of hard to find good music for like horror.
He likes Bloodborne.
Videos.
No, put a Bloodborne soundtrack on.
Well, yeah, I was going to add without using the same soundtrack over and over again, because Bloodborne is good, but if every video had Bloodborne music, it might.
Well, Silent Hill's music would have been perfect for this.
I was literally take a horror game. Even the Alan Wake soundtrack would probably work, to be honest. I've not heard it recently.
There's a lot of choices. There's a lot of choices.
It comes across as carnival music right now. That's weird. But it's fine. It's fine, Joe. I don't mind. I'm more interested in the script.
Protagonist has. Typically, a main character in a video game can't die. Sure, they can get ripped apart, impaled through the chest, blown up, all sorts of things, but they always come back. Sometimes it's contextualized within the game's world, sometimes it's a simple reload screen and you're good as new. Better, actually.
See, and that's the issue already. So they did die. You just now go back to a reality in which you did not.
It's almost as if players want to finish the game.
But, well, I mean, that's kind of the point that I was making before. It's just, you got to treat it as non-canon.
That's how you reconcile, you
try it again.
You didn't, it's not like a guy who dragged your body back to where you were and injected you with a thing that resurrected you. It's like, no, that's done. That timeline's done.
It's a non-canon fail state, essentially.
Yeah.
It's how the game contextualizes it.
That's how we all go forward with it. We're like, that's...
It's something that you don't even think about, though. It's just, that's it. That's how it works.
That's the crux, isn't it? It's like, he's saying he thinks about it, and that's like, okay.
Well, that's your problem.
Well, many would argue that he's only explaining his problem. He's not explaining a problem, but the thing is, he's absolutely explaining a problem. He starts suggesting solutions to this problem. It's not a problem.
Right.
And that is the problem with the video.
I also saw him say to somebody on Twitter that it's pretty... He was effectively saying that video game characters have superpowers because they can't die. So he's not stating it like it's his opinion. He thinks that is a fact about video games.
Not to mention, he does account for this in a bit, but it's just like this line of reasoning already makes us wonder. It's like, so you want permadeath? Does that solve your problem?
Right, yeah.
And obviously...
But again, does that solve the problem?
No.
Because you still have to restart the game, so it will never work.
The other issue is that you get. Let's say he was saying, he's not saying this, but let's say he said Alien Isolation, Amnesia, whatever else, it would be fixed with permadeath, and then he's happy. Imagine the amount of people that would never complete these games because of that. Like, the amount of people would say, my version was broken because I kept having to restart the fucking game. And
they would be super scared, and that would make it worth it. All the sales they'd lose.
I'll tell you what is so scary, playing the same, 5 hours over and over again, and being like, there we go. It's annoying enough with certain games that have saves. There's Alien Isolation can get you replaying the same past half hour or more if you die without having saved.
I mean, that's kind of the problem when it comes to horror games, because as soon as you die and you have to go back immediately, you get the chance to sort of rectify that non-canonical ending.
Yeah, but that's the point of games, though, isn't it?
Well, hence frictional games.
Did wrong and do it again.
They highlight this issue. They're like, when you play a horror game, it's scary up till you die, and then you're like, well, that's the high.
Here's something that always occurs to me. So, Outlast, when I played that in, fucking 2014, whenever it came out, that was the scariest shit ever. Because partially I didn't understand how the AI worked. I didn't know where the enemies were. It was just complete shroud of mystery that I was walking into, sprinting into even. And then as soon as I played it again a second time, it was not scary at all because I immediately knew what was going to happen, of course, but I started to figure out the AI, and then you could fuck with them and play with them. So as soon as mystery starts to become more clear. For example, when they were remaking Resident Evil 2, the new one, that is, they did an interview with the guys who worked on the first game, and the interviewer was this British guy, and he just asked him, okay, I have to ask you, how do the Crimson Heads work? Because it terrifies me. It's so scary. And he just laughed and looked at him and said, I think it's scarier when you don't understand how it works. And that always stuck with me. I was like, yeah, that's true. Because as long as you don't understand it, it's fucking terrifying.
And I was just going to say that the idea that you die and then redo even 10 minutes of a game, it'll start to sap the fear factor, which is actually kind of what Joe Svanson's getting at. But it's different for everybody. For a start, you could have someone literally restart the same section 10 times over and they're still terrified because they're just that invested. But Frictional tried to fix that. They were like, okay, so when you get hit by a monster in Amnesia, you get tagged for damage. And I think on the lowest difficulty, if you have a lot of health, you can take 3 hits from the basic enemies until you die. On Soma, like Alex pointed out, you fall to the ground, everything goes black, and then you wake up, X amount of time later, and you get up and you have a limp. The idea being, because it matches the narrative that the monsters only come after you because you're moving and making noise, and once they knock you down, you stop. That's it. So you carry on. You're like, oh, thank God I escaped, death.
I still play that one.
And that was their angle. They were trying to find a way around it. But the fact is, you still die in those games eventually. You still have a failure state because it's a game. And they didn't want to make a fucking rogue game where you restart the entire game. But this is the thing. There's so much nuance to this this topic.
Yeah.
Since you've learned something to avoid that same death next time. See, it's because of the interactive nature that this doesn't work. When a character is in danger in a movie or a book, there's...
You see what I mean, though?
It
feels like
it's starting to slip
in the for me as oh, well, look, I backed myself up, but you're talking as if this is...
A lot of people argue it ruins a script. It would not have ruined that sentence to say, this is why it doesn't work for me. Fine. Yeah. It's fine. Absolutely fine. Sorry.
Danger in a movie or a book, there's already a set ending for them. They very well could die in the scene that you're watching, or face lasting repercussions
and then
for mistakes.
I was going to say, is he discounting Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Yeah, and is he? What's his perspective on rewatching a horror movie? Are they ruined after you've watched them once?
Oh man, I know she dies. Fuck off.
That's what I'm saying. I don't want to watch Alien again. Dallas is just going to get killed.
Horror movies don't work for me because all of these characters are actually actors adhering to a script that was written by somebody. Once you recognize this, horror films aren't scary anymore.
No human beings.
Anybody can make these weird arguments. They're just not that strong.
See, there you go. So there's already 2 people who have said, isn't it pretty obvious he's just arguing for himself? No, it's not. Really not, and you'll never know exactly what he was actually arguing was a definitive issue versus an issue for him, and that's precisely why they do it. They'll avoid it, and you could be like, Joseph, did you make a singular point in this video that wasn't subjective? Did you make anything in terms of mechanical criticism? I'm pretty sure you would say like, well, no, I did share some things.
Is there an issue that he didn't explicitly state that?
Well, I haven't got a quote from him, but I'm assuming for the fact that he released this video that he wanted to share something of a mechanical analysis rather than just saying this is all my feelings.
Since that is kind of what he does, yeah.
Because he does loads of great teardowns of stuff with actual shit, you know. The Mario one, he tried to like sort of prove tedium by showing how many of the same thing there is. And obviously you can't prove that there's a feeling that someone will definitively have, but he provided great evidence for why you may feel it is where you know, and that's fine with me. Yeah. But like, this is my problem with this. He's like, this is why I feel this way, that you know, you die and respawn in video games, and we're just sitting here like, you enjoy anything then? Because this same shit happens in basically every piece of media that are limited by their own delivery. Well, limited by the fact that they aren't real, you know, like. It would have to be real for it to be truly authentic otherwise.
Someone needs to actually kidnap Jordan Anderson and hold a knife to his throat for him to feel a sense of immersion.
I think this is all rooted in the problem that for him, it seems to be that death is the main thing about horror. Like, dying is the main scary part. And the scary part isn't necessarily atmosphere or
I wouldn't even say, sorry to interrupt, I wouldn't even say that it's dying. It's like the looming threat of dying and all of the other sort of audio cues that come with it personally. Like, I'll talk about Visage in a little bit, because that's the really hot horror game that everyone's been playing lately. But that game has a lot of really interesting kind of horror philosophy behind it in terms of design.
And I just want to clarify as well, even if it is just his opinion, we're still welcome to counter or criticize. If he says something like, this is just how I feel, then we go, okay, but that feeling, sure, like, say, for example, I said I love all kinds of bright lights, but I hate torches. You'd be like, why? And then someone goes, that's just how they feel. It's like, yeah, but we want substance. That sounds like nonsense. Like, this is weird. And, yeah, and, you know, so call us assholes if you want, but we're trying to dissect his points, even if they are just
assholes. Then you're right. We are assholes.
I mean, yeah, I'd agree.
We don't shy away from that.
That ending for them, they very well could die in the scene that you're watching, or face lasting repercussions for mistakes. There's tension because every injury and every death is canon, whereas a death in a game is a release in tension instead of cranking the pressure even higher. You hit a fail state and restart. Suddenly that monster that killed you isn't nearly as threatening anymore, since you've just experienced the reincarnation superpower of your...
But you know you can kill you again.
It's not a reincarnation superpower. It's not... I can't even...
I want to stay silent. I'll let you guys have takes, because there's so much to unpack. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing that I would lead with, I think, was... that he doesn't seem to make the connection that the main continuity of the game is canon in the same way that the film is canon. So why is it that there's this distinction where, even though we can recognize that both have a canon continuity, also only one of them is effective? As
people are saying, respawning's not a fucking power. You die. Now you're playing as someone who did not die. That's it's like,
I guess he's
punching that point in
perspective of immersion and atmosphere.
I would say that, like, if the character isn't aware that they respawned, then it's not a superpower.
Question.
It's treated as non-canon.
What happens when Joe Svanson plays a horror game and he managed to not die? Does it become effective?
This game's too easy.
I'm not saying get good. I am not saying get good. But if the problem is, I keep dying and now I'm disimmersed, like, what about that guy over there who completed it without dying? He said it was the most terrifying thing ever. In his canon, he never died, or he died at the end, whatever. Well, in your canon, you died, like, 20 times, according to you. It's so, like, how do you reconcile that? And you're saying, like, that, you always had that superpower, though. You always had the superpower to respawn. It's like, yeah, but
okay, right, but here's something I've actually been thinking about. I was thinking about, you know, how with a film, if you're watching it, you know that at the second act, the main character's probably not going to die. Like, yeah, there's a slim chance that they might, but you pretty much know that the main protagonist isn't going to die before the third act. You could, what if you were to take somebody, sit them down in a room, and get them to play a horror game, and you didn't tell them if there was permadeath or respawns? what happens now? Like, if Joseph Anderson got taken into a room, sat down to play a game, and he wasn't told if it had permadeath or not, what would happen? You know, what would change?
See, personally,
wouldn't he find out while playing?
Well, he'd find out after dying. But
you guys know Layers of Fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
That game didn't have any kind of actual death in it, I'm pretty confident, and I just found it really annoying because what would happen is you would walk forward into a scripted death animation, fall down on the ground like you're dead, and then you would wake up, respawn in a new room, so it just progresses the story, which isn't really a death as much as it is just
it's like
the story.
I remember
I found that really fucking annoying when I played that.
When I figured out
died and felt like there was something on the line.
Yeah, when I figured out it was like almost a mechanic that was slapped on because they didn't really plan for you to actually say, for example, the monsters come and you run into it instead of running away just to test what happens, and it's like you fall over. Like, oh, okay, it's a bit weird. And yeah, and the Cinema Sins just mentioned, in fairness, that you could argue the superpower aspect is that you get the experience from that previous life. But I mean, my question would be, well, what happens if you repeat playing a game, or what happens again with films when you watch a film for a second time? I'm genuinely curious. Does Joseph Anderson think that horror films are terrible after you've watched them once? Like the second time cannot work?
That would be interesting to know, yeah.
See, I would say a lot of it is just kind of comes down to the detail. Like if you know this character is going to die, then you can still be freaked out by the details and the tension and just sort of like the pacing of it.
I of course agree, because I love rewatching some of the greatest horror films.
Mm-hmm. And just for the record, obviously, I'm nowhere near as like I'm not as much of an intellectual powerhouse as any of the people in this chat who probably have way more experience, like actually sitting down and thinking hard and critiquing things. I'm just like, yeah, I like fucking this game, and that did a cool thing. So I see what he's saying.
You overestimate me.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I'm thinking that like a lot of the best horror films, or the ones that I enjoy the most, are the ones where the dread comes not just from what's happening in the film, but I guess the question that it raises. Like I'd say Alien and the Thing are two good examples, because whether or not you've watched it before, the idea of that creature is still terrifying. And the idea that it's maybe possible because there's so much stuff in space, I think is probably the more effective horror component of it for me personally.
Yeah, I think the more I think about like the details of something and if it were to make sense, just what that would entail. Like for example, a lot of SCP related content, just the amount of detail that goes in the backstories of those, just to make it so like spine chillingly terrifying. The more you think about it, that's the kind of stuff that really like keeps me up at night personally.
Just sort of two pieces of information to throw in. One being, someone mentioned The Thing, and it's like every single time I watch that film, it just works. Like it creeps me out every time. But Cinema Sins mentioned that it's rare to find a horror film that will be as scary the first time around, simply because you don't know what's going to happen. And it's like, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that's what I'm getting at. It's like what Joseph Anderson's describing as ruining his immersion. I'm trying to say, like, isn't that par for the course in basically all media?
Right, because eventually you know that it's not that bad. I guess you know it's going to happen.
Yeah, there's no easy solution, really.
Yeah, what can you do other than bar people from having access to it again? You watched it once.
Yeah. We've been lingering on this.
It bans you on Steam. It's like a thing you have to agree to when you buy it. You're like,
deletes your BIOS. Sorry.
you try to get a different account, and some Steam official comes into your house like, "Excuse me."
that's horror.
That is horror. That's good.
Fail state and restart. Suddenly that monster that killed you isn't nearly as threatening anymore, since you've just experienced the reincarnation.
I find it interesting this is threatening, by the way. Because this monster that's just killed you is no longer as threatening. It's like, I don't know, I think it's pretty threatening if it's proven that it can kill me. But I think I get.
Like, I don't want that to happen again.
I think what he should have said there was scary, probably. Like,
yeah,
no problem.
But he's not even taking into consideration that games are mostly for overcoming a challenge of some sorts, and not for your character to be dead all the time.
Thesaurus.
How do you explain permadeath and metal?
Well, you can still restart the game.
No.
Superpower of your character that you always knew was there, but may have blissfully ignored until now. Imagine this happening in a movie. Death ruins horror games. Now, it could be that many can still separate themselves from video game protagonists.
This is what I mean, though, you know, where it's like, oh, this is my opinion. Said death ruins horror games. That doesn't sound. Does that sound like an opinion or more of like a statement?
As everybody will say, he only needs to say it's his opinion once or twice or 5 or 10 times, but then you're supposed to understand that it's always his opinion, even when he makes statements.
Can I just say, I'm annoyed at just how much screen time Dead Space is getting. Because that game is scary, but I don't really think it's that scary to warrant like using it that much throughout the... It strikes me as like he only had like a couple of horror games in his Steam library. He's like, all right, I'll just capture a little bit of this. And so that'll just
Alex, what do you find scarier, Alan Wake or Dead Space?
I'd have to be Dead Space.
Mel?
Yeah.
I'd say I'd go with Dead Space. I was more creeped out by Dead Space, but it could be. I could argue it's for more arbitrary reasons. Like I think, no, actually, to be honest, with like which one's more atmospheric, I'd be like, there's more probably jump scares in Dead Space, but I also think Dead Space is more atmospheric because of.
I tend to prefer like science fiction horror for whatever reason more so than other types of horror. Maybe because there's a little bit of plausibility to it. Like it might be plausible
that this is able to go on in some time in the future, or it is going on right now.
Perhaps. Space is so big, there's no way that we could actually... like, paranormal, we know is not real. Like, it's not real. Whereas science fiction is plausible.
We're going to have to keep saying this. I told you we'd have to keep saying this. Someone said, did you just read the name of the video? So, why horror games don't scare me. Meaning everything is subjective, aside from the times where he's not. Guys, please listen. He makes statements that are definitive sometimes. Okay, and we're trying to figure out which ones those are. It's tough because I guarantee you Joseph Anderson probably would be like, it's subjective if it can be counted. If it can't be counted, it was objective. It's like,
Also, it's my opinion. 20 seconds in, so it's fine.
That's my opinion.
It's almost like they didn't watch any of your other videos.
And it doesn't mean that we can't criticize it, even if it is his opinion. It's almost like I should put that just in a big fucking stamp on the stream.
On the stream the whole time.
Imagine themselves with all of their real human weaknesses in their place and be spooked. I will never say that is an invalid reaction to horror games, however, doesn't it also mean that the game has failed to fully connect you with the character you're controlling? Think of it this way, there is an Olympus Mons-sized difference...
Can we go back a second? I want to hear that.
Yeah, I kind of do as well.
Yeah.
I don't know how far back.
A little bit further back.
Yeah, that should be fine.
In a movie, Death Ruins Horror Games. Now, it could be that many can still separate themselves from video game protagonists and imagine themselves with all of their real human weaknesses in their place and be spooked. I will never say that is an invalid reaction to horror.
So you're saying you could play it and just ignore the fact that these people have more power than you and just feel scared on behalf of yourself? As opposed to you wouldn't be as scared playing as somebody with superpowers?
Or just that you don't care.
I want to see what he says afterwards because I feel like there's something that I'm thinking about.
Okay.
That
with all of their real human weaknesses in their place and be spooked. I will never say that is an invalid reaction to horror games, however, doesn't it also mean that the game has failed to fully connect you with the character you're controlling?
Okay,
Think of it this way, there is an Olympus...
What I've been thinking.
Go for it, Friggy.
If I were to make the point that a film isn't scary because I recognize that they're actors reading a script, then I could easily make the same argument that hasn't a horror film failed in some way because you have to force yourself not to think about the fact that there were a bunch of camera guys behind the camera and that somebody sat down and wrote this and that a bunch of actors shot several scenes at a time, you know,
broke my
basically
immersion.
Conveying this. I'm not seeing how somebody could make this argument. It just seems like you would have to deny the fact that it's fictional media altogether.
And he's just said, like, isn't that a failing on them to miss out on being able to connect you more so by making the character more so like you? And I'd just be like, again, I don't really understand where this is coming from. I can connect to, you know, like a space marine gerbil running around if they've got a great character versus an actual human in a normal day job, but he never says anything and it's just taxes. I'd be like, I don't care about this guy.
Relatability has nothing to do with your actual capabilities. I mean, that's not...
The darker glow in chat said, Nightmare on Elm Street is just Robert Englund reading a script. Those aren't even real burns.
not even real blood when he kills the actors. It's just fucking fake blood and shit. I bet those actors are still alive today.
Frauds.